Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee, and today I'm taking a look at the Automa Solo box for Terra Mystica, a game that has been around for a decade now, a heavy euro that has a lot of fans, and people really, really like it. This is a solo mode designed by the Automa Factory, whom you would know for working with Stonemaier Games primarily. I believe this is their first time branching out and working on a different game from a different company. And so I was very interested in this. I'm going to show you how this plays, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you only what's in this box. I'm not going to show you a whole setup of Terra Mystica, because I'm assuming that you know how to play Terra Mystica and you're interested in this product. If you don't know how to play Terra Mystica, I'm going to link another review below here that is going to take you to a regular Terra Mystica review that you can watch, and then I'm going to show you exactly how this stuff works, just what's in the box, so you get a feel of it. Let me show you how it plays, then I'll give you my thoughts. Here's just a quick splash screen of everything that comes inside the Terra Mystica Automa Solo box. The rule book is the same size as the box. It has a bit of explanation, a few concepts to go over. There's a small section here on how to implement the rules into a two-player game, almost no differences. So as you can see, this is basically all just cards, and it's the tokens here that so it'll fit into your basic box of Terra Mystica. I'm not going to show you everything in context of the full board and whatnot, but I'll show you that these opening 6 tiles here are going to be the end of round bonuses, both for yourself as shown on the top, as well as for the Automa. It's going to earn a certain number of points here onto the bottom. And the rest of these tiles function normally as you would expect. This is going to be the Automa difficulty, one of the things that you can do to change it up. You can play from level 1 all the way up to 2 through 5, and this is going to change up the number of points that it will earn based on certain action cards that get revealed. To set up the Automa, you're going to choose for it to have a terrain type, maybe the wastelands in this case. Then, based on the wasteland, you're going to look at the starting terrain card, the starting map card here. You're going to flip over one of the Automa cards. This is the only time that you're going to look here on the bottom, and you'll see D and F. So you're going to put two starting dwellings on the D and the F spaces of the matching terrain. Next to the D, you're going to put one of the power pellets, because that will help you identify when it's going to try to expand based on whether a card shows power pellet, in this case D, or the non-power pellet, as shown on this picture here, in which case it'll start expanding this side of its action area. When the Automa takes a turn, you're going to flip over at the beginning of the game 2 of the Automa cards. And I should note that the bottom 2 of the Automa cards are going to be turned sideways to kind of remind you when it's going to be more likely that it'll pass on its turn. You flip 2 of these cards over side by side. You're going to take the action as shown on the right side of the first card, and the left side of the second card is going to give you some qualifying information. So in this case, this is going to take the terraforming and expanding action, and it'll expand out from the disk area, the dwellings where it has the disks versus the ones where it doesn't, and this is going to clarify whether it's going to favor a certain type of terrain. So on the A track here, the cheapest terrain. And then this is going to show here as well, based on priorities and such, whether it's going to try to terraform from the top left or from the bottom right going across. After it's taken its turn, it'll also earn, in this case, 1 victory point. After you take your turn, this card is going to slide over, and the Automa will reveal the next card. What was previously the support card has slid over and has now become the action card. And the new card flipped over is going to be the support card, which is going to help qualify and specify how the action is going to be carried out. So the Automa is going to try to upgrade a dwelling in this priority order of type of building. And so it's going to start from the bottom right and move over. This shows that if it's the 5th or the 6th round, it's also going to try to grab one of these tiles to be able to move up the temples. And so that's why you check this symbol here that shows it's going to try to pick the temple that you are further ahead of it, and it's going to catch up to you. This here shows that it'll earn X number of points, and that's where this card comes into play. Based on the round number, the X means different amounts of points, and you can see that if you are playing a more challenging version, every time the X number of points symbol comes up, if you're playing the hardest, it'll start to get lots of different points. Now, because this deck is turned sideways, the next time the Automa goes to take its turn, it'll flip over a card. Say that it flipped over, let's say that it flipped over one that shows this passing symbol here. If the deck is sideways and it flips over a passing symbol, instead of taking the next action, it will simply pass. It's going to grab either the first, second, or third of the available bonuses, the bonus tiles that are out. And so this one shows here, for example, that's going to take the second one, the middle one, because there's always 3 left over when you set up a 2-player game. When it passes, it will end its turn. You can continue taking as many turns as you want, and it's going to add the top deck of the Automa, the top card of the Automa deck into the hand here, shuffle up, and so now it's got a longer series of actions it can take before it's likely to pass. And you can continue doing this over all 6 rounds of the game, and it's going to give you power, build up, upgrade, and do all the actions that you would expect an Automa to do in Terra Mystica. Now let's take a quick look at each of the factions. Each of the factions acts a little bit differently. It recommends that you start with the Simpletons because they have a very simple action to run. Whenever this symbol is shown that shows do the Automa faction's action, in this case, the Simpletons will simply build, following the normal rules, and get 2 points. They do start with 1 step on each of the 4 temples. Now moving up in complexity a little bit here, you have the Powermongers, who of course build and get victory points at each action, but they're also going to try to build in such a way that it gives you the most power. But they also have this ongoing benefit that's going to help them move up temples. The Mimics here will build whenever the Automa action is brought up. However, they're going to use the ATP, or the terrain type card, instead of their own on this action. They're going to try to match yours, meaning they're more likely to build into yours type of spaces and make it harder, more expensive for you to spend more shovels. The Wanderers can ignore normal range restrictions, so they can build further out. The Racelings, and you'll notice that many of these are going to have different combinations of temples symbols here in the top left, so they won't be as high up on some of them. The Racelings here have a very simple build action. However, if they pass before you, they're going to earn more and more victory points. They're going to double what one of these round marker tiles might be showing for the Automa to get. The Druids here, once again, simple action, but they're going to be able to move up the priest temples quicker. The Cuddlers, they like to build right next up to you. They like to cuddle. The Go Gnomes have these 2 extra cards that are going to be set out at the beginning of the game. You're going to shuffle up randomly 3 of the Go Gnome tokens and set them out. These are going to be objectives that they're going to try to fulfill over the course of the game. And so, if they do so, the Go Gnomes say that if they complete objective 2, maybe 3, and or 4, they're going to get more victory points as they achieve them. Over here, the Blight and the Symbionts are the most complex because they have 2 different cards with more information about them, making it more challenging and more difficult for you to be able to build around, or just kind of overall changing a little bit more of how the Automa is going to run while trying to play against you. So 10 different factions in the game, and that's the Terra Mystica Automa Solo Box. If you've played other solo modes designed by the Automa Factory, I think some of these cards and some of the way that the cards flow is going to be a little bit familiar to you, and yet it's still going to be a bit of a learning curve because Terra Mystica is a game that has so many concepts. There's so many branching decisions and growth on the map, and the buildings to upgrade and tracks to move up, and so I think that this solo mode handles it pretty well. However, the rules book, the rule book has a lot of concepts that it has to explain at the beginning, not just Terra Mystica terminology and stuff in general, but also how the Automa is going to deal with them generally speaking. And so it's going to be a little bit of a stilted first play. Guaranteed, your first play of it, you're going to look at this and say, okay, the left side action card shows that these 2 modifiers on the right are going to matter, numbers 1 and 3. Then you look over the modifiers. Okay, which one of these takes precedence over the other one for this type of action? It's going to be a bit procedural, and you're going to be looking through the rules decently often, but I think that by the end of your first game, you'll have a pretty decent grasp of how it's going to work. I like that the solo mode builds out on the map so that you have stuff to be adjacent to. It's going to give you power. You're going to, I think the thing that it does really well is you don't have to track resources for the Automa. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just have a pile of their wood bits on the side. And so you're building next to them for the discount, but not necessarily, you're not worried about giving them power. But you also do want to be building near them, so that way when they upgrade, when they do all that, it does give you the power boost as well. I like that because it's interactive not only in cutting off the map, but in giving you that benefit. That's one of the biggest things I was worried about. Terra Mystica is a pretty interactive game, and how do you parse it down to one Automa opponent? I think this box does it surprisingly well. There are 10 different factions that you can play against. I have not played all of them, but I do, even just reading through them and looking at them, I can tell, God, this one's going to behave this way. This one's going to do stuff differently. This one is intentionally giving me extra power. This one is intentionally avoiding me, therefore robbing me a little bit of that. The fact that they could make 10 Automa factions that behave differently and have different levels of management is great. The Simpletons is definitely where you want to start, because their specific Automa action card will do very little, whereas some of the other ones are going to be a bit more involved. The game seems to scale really well. You can play it on the easiest setting, and it even gives you another variation where you can take out the number 3 action card from the Automa deck, so they only have 4 action cards before they pass. And that's not even 4 actions, that is at most 3 actions. But the fact that a new card from that deck will get added into its usable deck each round means that they are growing. It functions as if they're having a better resource income each round, because they will be lasting a little bit longer, a few extra card flips. So I like that. It's kind of scales with you as you're scaling over the course of the game. I think it'll probably often pass before you, just by very nature of that, unless you start with the more advanced variants, where you throw an extra card or 2 into that starting deck. But whew, that becomes really challenging. You can also ramp up the difficulty, not just with the deck, but also with the little modifier card on the side, so that every time they do an X strength action, it's going to earn a few more points, to the point where you'd have to be really good to play against that level 5 Automa. So this is good. For someone who's not great at the game like me, I can play easy mode, and I'm not ashamed that I can win against the easy mode, and I might ever, go more challenging, but I doubt it. But if you are a diehard, then you could play against harder and harder challenges. That's great. I feel like they did pretty much everything right in this box. It is manageable to run, a little bit flowcharting at the beginning, like I said, but it gives you, I think, what you want out of an experience like this. Plus, you can play Terra Mystica quicker, because you're quickly managing their turn and then just focusing on what you want to do. It gives you a moving point to moving victory points to try to beat an opponent, to actually beat their score with flexibility, like I said. I think those are good. Those are all good things that I like in my solo modes. The biggest drawback for me is I just have to set up the whole game of Terra Mystica, and that's a lot of setup. So overall, what I'm doing is I'm reviewing this box, not Terra Mystica. I find Terra Mystica to be a good game, but not one I love and adore. But this box, I'm going to give an 8.5 for its solo mode, because I think it does pretty much everything that I want it to. It is a bit of management, it is a little bit of difficulty, and you just have to set up a very large involved game. But I think this is one that people really will like if you enjoy Terra Mystica. Are you going to miss the multiplayer experience? Well, sure, but you're probably watching this because you're probably a solo gamer and are thinking, is this worth getting? If you love the game and you want to be able to play it even when other people aren't available, I think that this will do well, and I think you'll have a lot of fun stuff to explore in here and step up to more and more increasing challenges. So that's my thoughts on the Automa solo box for Terra Mystica by the Automa Factory and Capstone Games. Thanks for coming by another Dice Tower review. My name is Chris Yee. Have yourselves a fantastic day.